So let's look at making some more complex polygon objects. The easiest way to make a polygon object is to start with a primitive, and a lot of the time this is a great way to begin modeling. We also can use NURBS modeling tools, but we'll talk about that in another video. So if we want to make a cube, we can go to the shelf here and just make a cube. However, if we go into the Create menu and go to Create Polygon Primitives, into any one of these we can open up the option box and we can change some of the default settings, so its width, height, and depth, and the subdivisions along those dimensions, and just some other things here. So if I just leave it at the defaults and click Create, now we can see what we get here. So we get the transform node, shape node, and one input in the construction history, and those are the same settings we just saw a moment ago. And so this is still available to us. If we go to the attribute editor, we can see these here too, and we can see some more settings that you don't see in the channel box. So if I wanted to, I could go in and change the height here, the depth, and so on in the initial construction node. But if we are happy with the way things are, we can delete the history on the object. So that's under Edit, Delete by Type, History. So this is a useful thing to do as you work when you don't need the construction elements on an object. You can go in and delete the history, and this will act to speed up your scene, make calculations less complex, and avoid just some weird problems that can arise when there's too much history in the scene. So we can delete that. But what's being deleted when you actually do that? I'm going to undo that. And another place to look at this is under Windows, the Node Editor. So here we see the polycube and the polycube shape. If I select the polycube, and this box means map the input and output connections, we can see we have that initial construction node here. We have the shape node, and we have the translate or transformation node. So if I select this and go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, you can see it gets rid of that construction node. It doesn't get rid of the shape node because that's integral to the object itself. We'll come back to this again later. So at any rate, creating primitive objects is a great way to start modeling. Now there are some key modeling tools that you can rely on after this, and a good place to find them is another tab here called the Modeling Toolkit. If you want to look for them up in the menu set, it's under the modeling menus, and they'll appear under Mesh, Edit Mesh, Mesh Tools, and Mesh Display. But Maya's gathered them here in this modeling toolkit. Now we can't activate the settings for each one, so if you want to change the default settings for, let's say, beveling this cube, we'd have to go to Edit Mesh, Bevel, and open the options here. And I'll just reset them, and we can make these changes. Then those will be felt every time we press bevel. We'll get back to bevel in a minute. Let's look at extrude and bridge here. These are important ones. So if I want to extrude, now this is not the same as NURBS extruding, although it's similar in style. If I right click on my object and go into face mode, I can select one face, or I can select more, and I can click on extrude. And I can just scrub over the word thickness and it will change this. Local translate will do the same thing essentially. You'll notice the difference is thickness leaves the manipulator handle here, whereas local translate moves it with the face. So it's either moving the face or actually activating the extrude. Offset will sort of taper or expand it as it goes along. And then divisions will change the number of divisions as you go. Okay, so that's what extruding is. Now if I extruded more than one face, clicked on extrude, and do the same thing, and they extrude together as a unit. You can see keep faces together is turned on. I can turn that off, and it looks the same, but if I actually go in and smooth this model, you can see they're actually separated. They were just, those sides were exactly in the same location. Now if we look in the channel box here, we can see I've got my 2 poly extrudes still in here. You can actually go back in and change some of these qualities if you want to change the quality of the action. So that was the first one. This is the second one. Oops. So sometimes they won't interact nicely when you go through history and start changing things, because there may be some dependencies that won't work well together. But that's extruding. One last thing you can do with extrude is you can make a curve. So I'm going to go into the top view here, go to create curve tools, CV curve tool, and just draw a curve that's near one of these faces. Go to face mode and then hold down shift and select the curve, and select the face, shift select the curve, extrude, and you can see that it kind of goes along the curve, but it doesn't match the shape because it doesn't have enough division. So if I start turning up the divisions, it will start to match the shape. Now one weird thing that can happen, and I'll show you this over here. Let's say I draw another curve, but note how I'm drawing the curve here. I'm not drawing from the face, I'm drawing in the opposite direction toward the face. Remember, curves have directionality, and this is taken into consideration for the extrude. So if I select this face, shift select the curve, and go to extrude, see something weird is happening here even if I turn up the divisions. It's because this is the beginning of the curve, so this face is trying to jump over here and then extrude back down the curve. We can fix this easily by selecting this curve and going to curves, reverse direction, and then it will work just fine. So that's a common thing that happens by accident when you're using this technique. Another tool that we use a lot is the bridge tool. So if we want to select, let's say, 2 faces, they have to be on the same object. And if I click on, I'll go to Edit Mesh Bridge so I can get the settings. And by default, it will just be a linear path going from one face to another. But in this case, I kind of need a smooth path plus a curve, and we'll see this in a second. I'll give it, some extra divisions. You can see bridges between those, and because I chose the curve option, there's actually a curve inside here that you can see if you go into wireframe mode, and you can adjust the shape of the curve. If you just use the standard setup, if I get 2 faces that are kind of facing each other here, go into Edit Mesh Bridge and reset the settings. So just a linear path without a curve. Then it'll just bridge between those 2 things. And I can add extra divisions. Can taper, you're not going to see it here. Can twist, so you can twist the curve if you want. Oh, sorry, the bridge. And if you smooth it, you can see you can get something like this. One more tool that we use all the time if we want to add some extra local geometry is to insert an edge loop. So if I hold down Shift and right click, if I hold down Shift, we can insert an edge loop, and you can see it adds divisions in here. Now we'll talk a little bit more about this later on when we talk about modeling with clean geometry using quads that allows the insertion of edge loops. But this is a great tool to add some local geometry.